Hello, I have a big treat today for any of my subs that like to sew because you've been a bit hard done by if you're one of my subs that subbed because they liked the sewing videos that I did, because I haven't been doing many sewing videos lately, but that's all going to change because I'm going to do an Irish lace project. And the reason I thought of doing this was that I got such nice feedback on a couple of projects that I showed of my hibernation project series on this channel, that I made use of Irish lace applique kind of bits and bobs on the items I was making. So one person actually came into my comments and said, "Ooh, I got chills when I saw you removing the Irish lace from its backing." So Irish lace is this kind of mysterious thing. It was to me before I learned a bit about how to make it. And I thought, yeah, I think people would actually really enjoy a little project with the Irish lace. And the project is these things. These are samplers, okay? And samplers are, you probably, if you sew, you're familiar with these. Um, Samplers are things where you're testing out your stitches. So this is a lovely project for slow stitching kind of a project. And I have samplers with 6 squares in them here with different Irish lace stitches in each square. But the project that I'm going to do, that is going to be a follow along project, so you can sew along with me and follow through. I don't know how many videos it will take to do, but follow through. There'll be a few videos on it. And you should end up with a sampler at the end of it that mightn't look exactly like this, but we're going to do a kind of a 2 panel sampler in Irish lace. I'll give you a little closer shot of that, okay? Okay, so there's a close up, and you can see how small they are. It's only like 2 centimeters, the rectangle that way. And just a bit coming in a bit less than 4 centimeters, about 3 3/4 centimeters. Uh, but I'm avoiding doing a 6 panel one with you because I think it's nice when you start, if it's a new skill to you, when you do something that's not going to take too long to complete, and you don't have that thing of maybe losing heart in the middle. And it's up to you what way you want to customize this rectangle. It's a rectangle that is made up of two kind of more or less square shapes. It doesn't have to be exact even when you're making it, but I'm going to show you the first part of making that project now. So if you think that sounds like something you might like to get involved with, here is what you need for your materials. This stuff is just cotton. And this one is a kind of a medium grade cotton, in a green, but any neutral color that your white cotton for lace making will show up on would be appropriate for that. And I don't need a big piece. I only need like a little piece of scrap that's left over from something. I've actually reused this piece so many times now for lace making. So you can actually reuse little pieces and an offcut from something else you have. That's, I wouldn't advise black, because white and black, I think that they stress your eyes out a little bit. But a neutral color that's dark enough that a white thread is going to show up well on it would do you perfectly. And again, they are just very small pieces, but big enough that if you make a little rectangular shape in the middle, it'll sit in the middle of that with plenty of space around it. It has like a couple of centimeters around it on each side, say. And you're going to need 2 pieces of that, and you will discover why shortly. The other thing you need, um, and you don't even need it for this first session. You can use just any white thread. Oh no, you do need it actually for this session. I'm just thinking. This kind of thread, this is Madeira thread, but it's classed as kind of quilting thread, but the weight of it is a 30. So this is not a very, very thin lace making thread. but it is a suitable thread for lace making. Ordinary machine thread tends to be a little bit floppy, and ordinary cotton sometimes, depending on the cotton you get, is a little bit too fuzzy wuzzy. And there's a lot of little tiny knotting things you do and pulling things, and the tension has to be right on lace. So you don't want fuzzy bits, you want a good quality cotton. So this Madeira cotton in 30 is perfect for that, or a quilting cotton. This is classed as a quilting cotton, as I say. So 30 isn't too thin, but you're still going to get that lovely lacy effect. That's done in a 30, you know. There's one that's done in a finer thread. I would say this one is done in a finer, the whole thing is done in a very slightly finer thread. Maybe I don't know what size that would be. So that's what we're at. And then needles, well, really, you could say 2 needles, because we're going to tack around the outside, and that's whatever size you're comfortable with. And for your lace making, you're going to need a fairly small needle with a fairly small, easy to pull through eye. You don't want the eye to be something that's kind of out too much, because you want a nice smooth. So typically an embroidery needle in a small size would do you nicely. It has to do with what you find comfortable yourself, okay? But the bigger a needle you use, the less comfortable it's going to be doing lace. Okay, so let's get started in our first session of the project. So I'm tacking my 2 pieces together, and that's just to make it easier to work on. I don't have a knot in the back. But I usually do a little back stitch before I start tacking. And this bit doesn't have to be a work of art. But remember, this is a slow stitch project. So it's about enjoying every stage and not being in a hurry to do anything, which is a great attitude for lace making, because that's when you make horrible mistakes, when you're in a hurry. So I'll just finish tacking this. I'll meet you when I'm finished tacking it. I do everything slowly when I stitch. I'm just finishing it off with another little back stitch at the end. And I did tell you it wasn't going to be a work of art. It's just to hold those 2 bits together. And if you're wondering why there are 2 bits, you could either go back, satisfy your curiosity by watching the video about making that journal cover, which shows you why there were 2 bits. Or you can wait and see. It has to do with the way you take the lace off the thing. Now, the next thing I'm doing is I want to get thread that's going to make a kind of a support structure that goes around the edge of where I'm making the lace. And that scaffolding or support structure is called a cordon or a cordonnet. And you use it to hold the stitches on while you're working. So it's going to be a rectangular shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to be working with that cordon, a double thickness of thread. And we want to get enough thread that would go all the way around that rectangle and that bar in the middle, double. So we're just doing that by eye, but it's about, for me, it's about a little bit more than an arm's length should do it, doubled. Okay, so I've got a piece of thread like this when I'm finished, okay? Now the next thing we're going to do when we have our piece of thread is you're going to make sure that your needle that you intend to use for your lace making, all your lace making, has a piece of thread threaded through it. And this is not quite long enough for me. This is kind of the recommended length, to be honest, for sewing generally and for making lace, but I tend to use it very slightly longer, and particularly for this cordon bit, because I don't like having to start off a new thread in the middle of it. It's not the end of the world if you have to. It's not that important. You just put a little knot and come through from the back if you have to do that. But hopefully I won't have to do that. So the next bit is going to be drawing a rectangular shape. Now for this project, because it's a very simple rectangle, I can just draw it with, a chalk pencil or an ordinary pencil onto the fabric. However, if you wanted to do at some stage, you could do this straight off the bat if you're feeling very confident. If you wanted to do something with more squares in it, you might find this method very handy, where you draw the shape out on a piece of paper and then you put some sticky stuff. This is called contact sheet in the brand that I buy, but it's a sticky peel back see-through paper. You put that on top of your design, stick it down to the fabric, and then, as you can see by all the millions of little holes that are already in this piece, you just leave it on the fabric while you're working and sew right through it. So as long as that contact sheet that you get isn't too thick, that's one way of transferring any design. And for things like these that are, floral things and everything, it's often done that way. But I'm not doing it that way. I'm just going to draw it on because it's a simple 2-square thing. And I don't want to hit you with too many tricky things for, what's basically a mini project where you're going to learn a few stitches. So here's my little sneaky way of doing it. Cut out a piece of paper that's just under 4 centimeters by 2 centimeters, the size that this one was. Laid the piece of paper down and then do my line by going around the piece of paper. And I got the right angles from using that kind of little squared ruler. But a T-square or corner of a piece of paper or something will help you get it. It's really the corners that you want to get the registration lines right for. You can come out a little bit if you want. So this just has to stay on long enough for me to get the cordon on straight, okay? So, you can see it chalked up a little bit there. It's good enough for me to start sewing now. I nearly forgot the bar across the middle. So obviously you want to go halfway across there, and then you want to make sure that it's straight to the sides. I'm terrible at getting straight lines, but even I can manage this. Okay, so I have my doubled thread that I think looks long enough to go around the entire thing and down through that bar in the middle. And this is going to make up the cordon. And then I have my single thread, just threaded as you normally would, with a knot on the end of it. And what I'm going to do is, with the double thread, keep it doubled, and start somewhere in the edge of the rectangle. And I'm not starting in a corner, and I'm not starting at where the bar joins. I'm starting kind of in the middle there, right? Gonna hold that down to the right position, and I'm going to come around the back with my needle, and I am going to attach the cordon thread on the line. So, if you're holding it with your thumb, you've got to hold it the thread, so you can flip the thing over to make sure your knot is nice and snug. Only needs one little knot. It's not like sort of something like a quilt or something that needs to be really solidly held. So you're just going to pull through, make sure that I don't have any knots in it. I always get little knots in these if I do things too fast. There it is. So that's your cordon thread held on with one stitch. So we're going to continue stitching, and the way we do that is remembering that it's slow stitch, so you're not going to get all frustrated and start hurrying with this. working slowly, I think, is very good thing to do, making lace, and enjoy every single stitch. Now, you see the way I'm holding it there? That is where I'm going. I'm going to go kind of this down direction. You could go around that way if you want. It depends on what you're comfortable with. Now, the stitch I'm doing, I'm only coming down. It's actually less than a centimetre, less than half a centimetre that I'm coming down, a few millimetres. And I'm coming through from the back, up and across. So it's what's called a couching stitch. And I can even go into exactly the same point I came out at if I want. But I'm going through the line, basically. So I had the one stitch to start it off, just to hold the doubled thread down right at where the thread turns. And then I have another stitch. I'd like just bring it in a bit. And then my next stitch, if you can see it, is literally, let's measure it for fun, less than half a centimetre, 0.4 of a centimetre. Tiny. So you're going to continue like that, and you're going to go all the way around here, keeping that kind of distance. So you're holding the thread down, hold a little bit of tension in the piece while you're working, and take your time finding the line. I've actually moved the thread off it a little bit in order to find the line, but keep a little bit of tension on the thread and pull through and go across that thread, and that's your couching stitch. Okay, so I'll meet you when you go all the way around there. Keep going, turn, keep going all the way to this center point, and I'll be back. Okay, so you should have gotten around to the middle bar now and ended with the stitch right at the middle bar. And we're going to do something a bit different here. But I just want to mention, for anybody interested in the history of lace and different types of lace, that if this were Battenberg lace, which you see online in little free books and things that you can get online about it, you often see people doing that cordon with a linen or a cotton tape rather than sewing it like that. And that's Battenberg lace style, doing that. I've never done that, but it is an option. I'm not 100% sure how you get the tape off at the end to just show the lace piece. I'm not sure how that happens, but that's Battenberg lace. But this is how your piece should look at the moment. It looks your couching stitch at the back looks a little bit like a kind of a running stitch, but then your doubled thread is all at the front, you see. But we're pausing here because we're going to take half of the doubled thread, separate the strands, take half of it and go up the middle and back down and attach like that. Okay, so then we're going to continue on around to finish the thing off. And obviously, if you had a piece that had 6 pieces like that, 6 separate pieces, you'd have to kind of figure out if you wanted to do it continuously. Well, am I going down here, across, up here, or what? When you're splitting your thread, it takes a little bit of thinking out. But with the Battenberg lace, if you were using tape, you wouldn't use it across the middle bit because it would be even a thin tape would be too thick to do that. So you'd still be needing to know how to do this method. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take that, keep the tension on it, and just sew across this in the same way across the one thread, and then we're going to come back down. So I'll just find my line first. and show you what I mean. So there's a lot of this kind of turning the work around, as well as every once in a while checking the back to make sure you haven't gone too far astray. And you might even find that you might like the idea of putting 2 stitches in when you're turning a corner like that. I'm not worried about having the stitches as close together in this one. Because I'm coming back down and I'm going to hold the 2 threads together on the way back down, but I have to get that up to the top first. So I'm going to continue on that way, and they're slightly more spaced out than they would have been if I had been coming up this side. And then when I get to the top one, I'll show you how I'm attaching it, okay? Okay, I'm right nestled up to the edge of this bar now, and I'm going to turn the thread and come back down so it's doubled. But I'm going to go on the outside of that cordon there, rather than just across with my couching stitch. So think of kind of maybe doing kind of X-shape stitch, kind of, rather than. So you see that it's held pretty well now, but I'm going to also come up again. So 2 kind of little holding stitches. The second stitch, sorry, I have a tendency to move out of shot when I'm doing these things. The second stitch comes up right in the middle of that and holding it to the outside. You're just trying to get that really held solidly to the outer edge of your cordon before you turn back down with your thread. And that's to get it to meet up with its partner down here and continue on in a double thread. So we're going to stitch my way back down, and I'm going to keep the stitches nice and close together. It doesn't matter which side of these I come up on, but I am going to do my couching stitch across them, and I'm going to keep it the same distance, very close together, as I was for these ones, which are very, very close together. Okay, and get back down to here, and then make sure that before it turns is well attached before we go on. So we have that middle bit all nicely done now, and we've met up with the other thread that we left, and we're now ready to use the double thread again. And I'm just putting in another little stitch, couching stitch, in the corner there to make sure that's got a nice kind of sharp corner, and neither of the threads are sticking out. Obviously, if you sewed something in slightly the wrong place as you're going along, you would have just taken your needle out, pulled the stitch out, and corrected things as you went along. But we're going to carry on right until we get to here now, in the same style as we've been doing along. And we're taking a bit of care with it because this is the support structure for the lace and needs to be strong, and putting those stitches, couching stitches, so close together ensures that that cordon isn't going to move about too much when we start pulling on the lace to actually make the lace. Here we are back where we started. So you can see where the first stitch is there. And to finish, different people do this different ways, but what I do is split the thread. I go on the last stitch, I go in, sorry, am I in shot? Yeah. I go in to the middle of that loop at the first stitch that started the whole shebang off, just to make sure I'm attached all the way around properly. And then I go on a tiny bit more, just another stitch or so more. And then split the thread again and just go forward and with a few stitches and then back with a few stitches to finish. I'm actually gonna just cut these because I don't need as much of the thread anymore. So that kind of way, you see. And I'm going to do a couple of stitches forward. It's just to make sure that your support doesn't come apart, which isn't fun in the middle of a project. You know, keeps the stitches nice and tight. And then for the very end, you only do a couple of stitches like that. And then for the very end of the thing, you're gonna just neaten off that thread, cutting it as tight into the stitch as you can. But on the back, you're gonna finish it off with basically just picking up a tiny little bit of cloth, not going through to the front at all. Just picking up like a tiny strand and doing a tiny little, you can go under the stitches if you want an insurance policy, but you're not going through to the front. It's very important you don't go through to the front, because the whole idea of this is the reason that if you had watched the video of me making that journal cover, you would understand, is that these two pieces of cloth stay together for the whole process as you're making the lace, and don't come off until the lace has been completely made. So then when you've made the lace and the thing looks like has a thing that's something like this on the front of it, you are then ready to start taking the lace off and separating. Those two pieces of cloth are going to separate, and you're actually going to get in with your little scissors and cut the couching stitches basically in the middle of this sandwich. It's the couching stitch that you're cutting off. So if you're not sure what that looks like and you find it confusing, it's nice to know where you're headed, isn't it, for the next bit of the project. If you go back and look at me doing that piece, the journal cover, it's a hibernation project journal cover. If you go back and look at me finishing that piece, you'll see me taking the finished piece of lace off the cloth, and it's interesting to see, and it does get you clearer on what we're doing next. So that is your scaffolding to build this or this, whatever design. You can do it that way up if you like, whatever design you want for your Irish lace slow stitching sampler. And the next time I'm on, I will show you a lovely stitch called Brussels stitch, which is probably, I'm not 100% sure, but probably because of Brussels lace. Brussels lace is a very famous kind of needlepoint lace. So and if you wanted, you know, if you were bored waiting for me to put up the next video, you can actually make another one or two of these if you want, because they're the little panels that you practice. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed yourself there, and if you have this done for the next video, you're ready to do your Brussels point stitch with me. So I look forward to doing that, and I'll see you then. Have fun. Bye.